Welcome, everyone. Happy Wednesday. My name is Claire, and I lead our AI focus at GSV. Today, we're going to talk about what happens when two giants in their fields, one the world's largest learning platform, and the other one of the world's largest AI frontier labs, come together. On one side, we'll have Greg Hart, the CEO of Coursera, which currently serves over 160 million learners, thousands of universities and industry partners, and one of the global homes for online learning. And the other will have Leah, the VP of Education at OpenAI, obviously the company behind ChatGPT, hundreds of millions of users every single day asking, searching, and learning on their platform. And the key reason we wanted to have this conversation is because at DevDay 2025 last week, OpenAI announced that ChatGPT is evolving from just a standalone chatbot into a broader platform that supports third-party apps built on top of MCP. And some of their key partners include obviously Coursera, Canva, Expedia, and ChatGPT kind of becomes this front door to those applications, which is a pretty big shift in how we interact with the internet. So without further ado, I'd love to bring on both Greg and Leah to the conversation. Awesome. Great to have you both. Thank you for joining me.
Hey, Claire. Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much, Claire, for having us. Excited to be here.
Yeah, excited to just riff with you on how this fundamentally shifts how we interact with the internet, how we interact with learning content. But I guess I wanted to context that a little bit for the audience, especially for those who haven't had the chance to try it yet. I've been personally tinkering with it, was just playing with it right before this conversation. I wanted to start with what this partnership actually looks like in the ChatGPT experience. Leah, Greg, can you walk us through the general learner journey and what happens inside ChatGPT when they start exploring Coursera, and how is it very different from previous ChatGPT experiences?
Sure. Greg, you want to start and I can add?
I'm happy to start. So, as a user is using ChatGPT, they can start a prompt and say, Coursera, can I learn data analytics? And so, maybe they're interested in, gaining a new skill and they wanted to find more information about it. If they use Coursera in the start of their prompts, then ChatGPT is going to try and surface a relevant video from our catalog of more than 10,500 different courses from top professors and industry sources, course details, and then they can watch the preview of that video, and then they can link through to Coursera to enroll in that course and take that course. And then the other thing that ChatGPT also tries to do is suggest Coursera, even if the user doesn't directly type in Coursera. If they're engaged in a set of prompts that is about learning and about learning a topic where Coursera might have lots of relevant courses, then ChatGPT will try and suggest the relevant course for that specific topic. And so that's basically the preview experience for Coursera on ChatGPT. But Leah, please expand on that.
Sure. So the broader context here is that OpenAI recently launched apps in chat, essentially opening up the OpenAI chatbot to the broader ecosystem of technology companies that would like to build experiences into chat. Coursera is the first app that's been brought in as a learning partner. And I think Greg shared a little bit about how you can invoke the app. But there's also a couple things that are also interesting about the integration. One, it's the first time you're actually seeing a context connector bringing video into the chat experience, not just as sort of a searchable link with a player popping up. And the other thing that's interesting is that when a Coursera clip or a video starts playing, the user can continue to chat and inquire about that video. So not just passively consume the link, but they can actually ask questions. They can ask the video to pause and dive deeper based on what they are trying to learn and understand in that video. So it really just adds sort of a bunch of new elements to the chat experience, particularly for those who are trying to learn.
I love that. I mean, one of my, I've shared this with you all, but one of my historical angst with the chatbot experience is that it has been so text-based, and there's not a way to bring in interactive video, engaging content into that user experience. And I love that you can actually now ground what you're learning in actual authenticated, Coursera content. Such that what you're getting is grounded in true learning material as opposed to just walls of text. So I think this is a really interesting shift. I guess with all the Coursera content that's available, you mentioned 10,500 plus courses available. How do they know what to surface? Are you surfacing a full course? Is it modules? There's just so much that you can deliver to a learner. I'm curious how you think about putting on a plate the right experience for them.
Maybe I'll start and then pass it back to you again, Leah. First of all, just to make clear, we're not embedding the full course. It's really just a preview of the course. But as Leah said, it's a preview of the course with the video, in the actual ChatGPT experience, not a link off to a player. And you can query as you're watching the video about the material in the course. And so it's a way they can start watching a video, they can learn about the course. And then if they have more questions, they can ask those questions directly in the ChatGPT experience. If they decide, actually, this course is perfect for what I want to learn, they can link through to Coursera, they can enroll in the course and start the full learning experience on Coursera. One of the things that we do to make that experience as rich as possible is to leverage AI. And so very shortly after ChatGPT launched, Coursera launched a number of features that leverage Gen AI to provide a better learning experience. So Coursera Coach, which is a Gen AI-driven tutor that sits alongside the learner in every single course. And so they can go through to Coursera to get that full experience after going through a very rich preview on ChatGPT.
Yeah, which is interesting because I think the other key part about tackling the learning problem around AI is it's never really been a problem of lack of information. It really has been a lack of figuring out where do I start, where do I go for what content, and the learning journey itself. And it feels like you all are really centering around that problem as opposed to just let's solve for more content, but not really solving for where do I start, how do I get from point A to point B. And maybe walking and taking a few steps back, I actually want to talk a little bit more about how this partnership came together. There are a lot of AI players, there are a lot of learning players, but you all are obviously big names in the space. I'm curious what led to this partnership. Greg, specifically, I want to hear about what your North Star objective was for Coursera to partner so closely with OpenAI specifically.
Sure. Well, first of all, we're incredibly proud to be the first online learning platform that OpenAI turned to, when they wanted to launch the app SDK and the app experience within ChatGPT. So we're very, very excited to be one of the 7 launch partners. And it's a milestone that we're excited about because it really puts all of that trusted content that we have and the world-class learning from instructors from universities and industry partners directly into the most widely used AI tool in the world, and one of the most widely used tools of any kind in the world, 800 million weekly active users. And so it's a fantastic way to bring our trusted content into the place where people are learning about everything. And it expands on our mission. Our goal, our North Star, is really to help the world's learners master the right skills that they need to grow their careers. And so it's a fantastic way to get in front of people, because one of the first things that they often do as they're thinking about the skills that they need to learn for their careers is start with a much more general query on ChatGPT. And so it's a fantastic place to put all of our rich material in front of learners on ChatGPT.
Yeah, it's almost the best example of meeting learners where they're at, as opposed to having them go on Google or look through a massive library and them figuring out. It almost brings the learning to them. Leah, I guess on your side, there are so many potential partners for you all there. You've already launched with 6 other big names in other verticals. Why Coursera, and what unique role do you see it playing in the ecosystem? I know you were previously at Coursera as well prior to joining OpenAI too.
Sure. So stepping back, we are really on a journey to improve learning in ChatGPT and improve learning with AI. And I would say even broader than learning, to help more people around the world achieve their goals and their dreams with ChatGPT. And if you look at what the world is doing in ChatGPT right now, it falls into 2 main buckets, both of which I think are interesting from a learning perspective. So 49% of people in ChatGPT are asking questions. So 49% of the messages have to do with asking, learning being a subset of that. And another 40% are actually doing and sort of taking actions and completing tasks. And so if you look at sort of what these learning questions are about, people are are looking to serve all sorts of learning goals. Some people are looking to develop new skills. Some people are looking to sort of be taught or tutored on a specific topic. Many are college students or high school students who are trying to progress on an academic journey. And I think if there's one thing I took from my experience at Coursera, it's that sort of structured expert learning that drives to credentials has a very important role in place in our society, and motivating people to learn and giving them a signal that they can then bring to the marketplace. And certainly a purely text-based learning experience, the way ChatGPT is now, is far from the way most people would desire to learn. So I think, bringing Coursera into chat does a couple things. One, it allows chat users to interact with experts, some of the best world experts. It allows them to potentially go from the point of initial inquiry and curiosity to then dive deeper into a structured learning journey. And it also, from a brand perspective, connects, I think, two very powerful consumer brands, which for the learner makes a difference, because half of learning is about building the companies and credentials yourself, but half of it is also about having something that you can then take and show to the world. And I think Coursera also brings, with its university partners, brings a certain credential value that matters in this world.
Maybe, Claire, if I can just build on that a little bit. I think one of the things that's really interesting about this partnership for us is, if you go back to the start of Coursera's journey, founded by two AI professors at Stanford, Andrew Ng and Daphne Kohler, really evolving education through MOOCs, right? And through that impulse to take a course and make it available to the world. And then what we've tried to do since then, what Coursera has tried to do since then, is really keep evolving that learning experience to provide more and more value to learners. And, as you said earlier, meet learners where they are. And so, I think AI now gives us tools to evolve what that looks like in very different ways than would have been possible prior to the launch of ChatGPT. And so now learning can be much more personalized. It can start, even if Leah and I are both enrolled in the same course, we should probably be starting that course in different places. She might be more of a master in that topic than I am. And so she should start further ahead. I should start with more basic material. And then the pace that we move through it should also be dictated by our learning trajectories and what we're showing mastery of. And so, to me, this partnership is a great example of how both companies are really, not only fantastic brands, but also really trying to continually evolve that learning experience to deliver better results for learners.
Yeah. I mean, we at GSV look at so much in the ed tech and broader education tech ecosystem. And I think one thing that the MOOCs clearly unlocked was just accessibility and scale of reaching so many more humans. It was an amazing advancement in where education, how you deliver education. But it feels like we're at this moment now where we're moving from just, to your point, passive delivery of information to actually centering around the learner. And I can think of so many different ways this partnership could unlock, and I'm sure you all have ideas around this, but the ways that assessment could now be invisible, right? In order to assess whether or not Greg is at point A versus Leah at point B, you might not have to take this single checkpoint assessment that isn't even a good assessment of where you are in the learning journey. And instead it bases off your conversations or how you've engaged with the material. So just really exciting ways to actually, I think, flip education to really truly that personalized modality of delivery, as opposed to even just thinking, we hear a lot about personalization at a very superficial level of Claire likes horses and Leah likes dogs, and we'll change the content to that. But then now it's actually truly going up the layer of what does this person know and how do we get them to their end state. So I think really exciting. I'm curious to hear more about, I'm sure we'll talk about it later in the discussion, just what features you think could be unlocked with this partnership. But I guess tying to that, Leah, under your leadership, OpenAI has been doing so much in education. There's the partnership with the California State University system. You all launched Study Mode recently. It's kind of the first education product within the ChatGPT platform. Curious where this plays in the broader arc. What's your longer term vision for AI powered education?
It's a great question. Look, I would say I'm really focused on two things. One is improving learning and learning outcomes. How do we actually take someone who has a specific learning goal and get them to progress more rapidly towards that goal, including sort of engaging learners who are curious but otherwise wouldn't have taken learning seriously? So how do we actually progress learning? And then the second thing I'm really focused on is how do we actually get what's become an incredibly powerful learning tool into the hands of every student in the world, both those who are learning in a consumer context as well as those who are learning in an institutional context away. And I think, part of the challenge with engaging learners and driving learning is at the point of sort of discovery. I think what's interesting about this partnership, if you go back to that framework that I started with X percentage of people on ChatGPT are asking, X percentage are doing, what you're actually doing with Coursera is you're giving learners a way to proceed with their learning at the point of curiosity, at the point where they're asking a question. That's sort of one group of learners, and it's incredibly hard. We've stood up a Coursera website ages ago, and you have SEO and you have Google search. It's very hard. How do you get close to the learner right at that moment where they're like, oh, I'm interested in learning something new? So this unlocks that. I think the second sort of big challenge that's always been existing in learning is how do you actually bring learning into life? We go off to school and then we come home, and the rest of our life we go off to work and we come home the rest of our life. Years ago there was this concept put out about like learning, allowing people to learn in the flow of work, but we never really figured out how to do that. We were busy building LMSs and connecting them to Slack and WebEx, and there was a million experiments of how do we bring learning closer to work. Well, another 40% of the activities that are happening in ChatGPT are people actually doing tasks. Mm-hmm. So now people can go from actually doing a task to, chat saying, hey, I see you're doing a task and I know your skills and I know you have gaps. So here, let me help you. And let me help you with a Coursera course or a Coursera video or something else. And I think the third sort of dimension of opening this future of learning, curiosity, learning in the flow of work, is actually sort of connecting to skills. Like we're getting to a world where chat knows more and more about you. Over time, it will understand what your goals are professionally or personally, but it's certainly, as you do more, it's going to know your skills. And so again, you're seeing a possibility. Greg and Coursera team just did a number of big launches around skills pathways. Chat will soon know what skills a learner has, and then based on skills and needs can recommend certain courses as well. So I would say that's the part of the future of learning that I'm really focused on. How do we improve learning so that people can drive forward based on their curiosity, based on their needs at work, based on their skills or lack thereof, and then propelled through a learning experience that would be best fit for them.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think I want to double down on this question around skills inference and how you think about a user's skills, because I think we are at this moment where with things like Coursera, with this partnership, we are moving away from a model of this person has completed this schooling and therefore they have more social capital and knowledge capital than someone else, or they have this grade, to a system that is much more longitudinal and ambient and can infer those skills almost invisibly. This is maybe a bit more of a technical or product question, because obviously under every single partnership, there are a ton of product and design decisions that go behind to make this partnership work. How do you know what a person, based off of their conversation with ChatGPT or maybe their Coursera experiences, how do you know where a person is at in their learning journey? Are there certain signals you can infer from their conversation? Are there certain algorithms you're using to detect that learning intent?
Greg, you want to go first?
Yeah, maybe I'll talk a little bit about some of the things that we've built to help with that. And so we have a career graph on Coursera that leverages millions of data points from third parties and information that we have, our own metadata about our courses. And what we do with that career graph is build a model of all the various different occupations in the world, the different jobs and roles within each of those occupations, the levels for those jobs, and then the skills that you need at each one of those levels. And then we map those skills to the courses on Coursera that teach those skills. And so as we are trying to learn about learners on Coursera, one of the things that we're trying to do as they onboard is ask them information that helps us understand what are they interested in learning, and perhaps what is their current job and what level are they at, so that we can understand, you know, what skills they might already have, and we can map them to and guide them to the right things. And so one of the things, you know, Leah just mentioned, that we've had a number of recent launches around skills. I think one of the big broad trends that we are seeing play out is an increasing focus on skills, not just a degree, but skills. In part because the world is moving so quickly that the skills that you might have learned through your degree might not be as relevant as they need to be, and you might need new ones. And people are often learning about those new ones for the first time on ChatGPT, and then hopefully continuing on Coursera to gain you know, a credential in those skills. And so we take that information, you know, and all the metadata behind that, and then we pass that through the metadata to ChatGPT when we get a prompt. We map it to basically the metadata for the courses that are appropriate for whatever that user query was that triggers Coursera, so that you're pairing sort of the right, you know, prompt intent with the right course to ideally meet that intent. And one of the things that I would expect that we will continue to partner with ChatGPT on is just continue to improve that, you know, get better and better at that. As they have more context, we can do a better job providing the right course based on that context. So as a user refines their query, we give something that's a little different next time around.
And is that context bi-directional? I'm curious, obviously there's a lot of context on user, what they're looking for, user intent from the ChatGPT interface, and that funnels into surfacing better content on the Coursera front. But I'm curious, if someone comes back from a Coursera learning experience, does that then inform ChatGPT? I feel like that would be a very natural integration, but I'm curious if that's something you all just have on the roadmap, or something you're thinking about.
Not yet. Right.
Yeah.
So like right now, ChatGPT doesn't have collect skills data. I think if we did, it would be also, you know, we'd have to think through which data, what kind of data do users want to save for what purposes. The reality is, I think we're at like the tiny first step of what this integration could be. You may have noticed a month or two back, our new CEO of applications, Fiji Simo, launched an initiative around creating what she calls an opportunity network, and allowing users to both develop certifications, specifically in AI skills, as well as proceed to jobs. And we're in the process of defining what that ecosystem and product looks like. And I think someone like Coursera has a key role to play in it. You know, you can imagine a world where ChatGPT understands what a user's goals are. It understands what kind of job they may or may not want to proceed into, or can help them figure out what that job is. And over time, help build a map of skills, both from credentials that they learn on Coursera or from, you know, assessments given in ChatGPT. And we may go in that direction, but I think, yeah, it's very much the beginning.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see what you all do. There's just so much potential here to really, I think, for a big paradigm shift in how we deliver learning. I think maybe also going back to the more practical questions, just because Coursera has this massive, rich library, you all have everything from that careers graph to so much content. For an application to work inside a ChatGPT experience, I'm curious, what did the Coursera team do to adapt your content? Does it mean shifting it to, you know, these smaller modules, since it is really more of a preview? Are there different kind of ways of delivering this content, especially since it is in app format?
Actually, you know, the great thing about the work that the team has done here over the years, both, you know, around things like the career graph, but also on how we construct the courses, is they are tagged with, you know, such rich metadata, and they're already modular. And so the videos themselves, you know, even if it's a quote longer video, you know, it's behind the scenes sliced into very short, you know, modules, so that we can understand the topics that are being covered in that piece of the video, right? And so it actually made it very, very easy for us to integrate with ChatGPT. The team didn't have to do a huge amount of heavy lifting to do it. There was a little bit of work to do it, but nothing out of the ordinary. It wasn't like everybody stop what you're doing and go make this work. It was really just around a couple tweaks, and so we didn't need to further slice the videos or anything like that. And one of the reasons for that is because I think it's really important that our content becomes ever more modular, because of the fact that we want learning to become more personalized. It has to be modular to be able to be personalized in that way, right? And so the fact that we already were well on that path made it very easy to do this integration. We're going to keep going down that path, on our own anyway. I think it'll also help enable a richer integration with ChatGPT, because I think, all the things that Leah was mentioning about what ChatGPT knows about a learner and about the context that they have, that's going to enable an incredibly rich learning experience, both on ChatGPT and on Coursera. And so, for those who are wondering what is behind me, that you might see an Echo. I led the launch of Alexa and Echo at Amazon, and one of the things that we really struggled with was when Alexa was integrating third parties, we didn't have the benefit of generative AI. We were using AI, but not generative AI. And so it was an experience that was kind of on rails, and it made it more awkward for users. And now with Gen AI, we're at the start of what I think will be this amazing experience that will develop over time that'll enable a much richer, better outcome for the learner, both on ChatGPT and then on Coursera, as we mine that context to provide a more personalized, more outcome-focused, more skills-driven experience.
Yeah, and I love that it was so easy. I mean, this partnership seemed like a very easy integration because you all have always been so skills-oriented in a modular way, right? It hasn't just been, here's a course. It's really been focused on delivering modular skills-first learning. And it makes sense why that's the direction that we're all heading in. I'm curious, I know it's only been a week or less than a week even, if there are any early learnings or feedback that you've gotten from learners. I'm curious if you're seeing any patterns around usage. And just from, I know it's only been a week, so it might all be anecdotal for now.
Well, so Sarah, one early learning, I would say since getting into this job, I'm continuously approached by different ed tech and platform companies. Half of the companies are saying, what can we do to actually not be in the trajectory of ChatGPT? So build a product that's differentiated so it doesn't absorb what we're doing. Because there was a whole wave of sort of early AI tutor companies that just went poof. And then the other half of the companies are asking, how can we actually use your distribution to get to market? And I think since this thing has launched, the amount of inbound questions and requests from AI companies, education AI companies to do something and follow Coursera has been tremendous. And, it's interesting to sort of look at who's reaching out and who's not reaching out. Part of the reason I really admire the decisive move that the Coursera team made in doing this partnership is it's very easy to see ChatGPT and its trajectory as a threat in education or a mega player that's going to come in and eat up the whole learning space. But I think what Greg and the team realize is that education has always been a very large, diverse marketplace with different people learning for different reasons, with different preferences on how to learn. And there will always be, I think, at least a very important place for high quality, expert, credentialed, interactive, skills-based structured learning, which is where Coursera leads. But there's a whole world of companies that are worried about doing something similar. They have built a very sort of closed framework with very proprietary UIs. They haven't built with the modularity that Coursera built, so it wouldn't be easy for them to interact. And then there's a world of ed tech companies that are doing amazing things that I'm sure they'd love to bring to Coursera or an OpenAI. And I do very much hope that this chat ecosystem is something that can give lift to some of those entrepreneurs who are building really sort of fascinating products and new experiences with AI that are just not things that chat would build in a first party way.
Yeah.
So that's been just striking, just the intention of the ed tech ecosystem. I think the hope that this partnership signals on many dimensions.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is such a positive partnership example. I'm curious, you all have been in the broader ecosystem and know how the traditional MOOCs or universities or publishers operate. What do you think this kind of partnership means for those players? Are you seeing any, especially I'd love to hear, Greg, from your point of view, if there are some of these traditional academic partners that are feeling hesitancy around their content or their experts being mediated by AI?
Well, I think mediated is probably the wrong way to think about it, because the AI is really introducing, ChatGPT is really introducing the user, the learner, to the content, but it's not mediating the content. And so you can see a preview of the course, and then you can ask questions of ChatGPT about the content in the course to help you decide if it's the right course for you. So to me, it's not really mediating it. It's just doing a fantastic job of helping the learner understand if it's the right course for what they're trying to accomplish. I think that, obviously, there's been a lot written about what's happening in education and what AI and Gen AI mean for education and how the education system might need to evolve. We have those conversations on an ongoing basis with our university partners, because obviously we came out of higher education, founded by Andrew and Daphne. And obviously much of our content comes from top universities from around the world. But I think that a lot of those universities also recognize that leaning into both where the world is going and the tools that they can use to help adapt is really critical. And so, the partners that we really, prize working within our university ecosystem are the ones that are really leaning into that.
Yeah.
Leveraging the tools that we provide, like Course Builder, for example, an AI-driven, capability to make it easy to take material and create a course on Coursera using that material. Those are the ones who actually really view this as a really exciting thing, because it puts their courses in front of 800 million plus weekly users. And I'm sure, like, in a month's time, it's not going to be 800 million, it's going to be 900 million or a billion. Like, the pace of growth is amazing. And ChatGPT is such a phenomenal tool for people to learn about anything and get introduced to any topic. If you're a university professor and you are the world's expert on that topic, why wouldn't you want to be there? Why wouldn't you want to be in front of that? And so it's a fantastic way to get their knowledge, their authority, and the pedagogy that they bring for that topic, so that you're not just learning random things, but you're actually learning in a structured way that gives you a skill that you can take out of that course. I think it's incredibly exciting.
Yeah. I love the way you frame it, because I think when people think about AI in education, it defaults to AI is replacing the experts and the educators, when in reality, a partnership like this is really more about increasing that top of funnel to high quality content. And I think almost as you see an abundance of content out there, I've really been thinking about how value really accrues, not necessarily to who can make the most content, but who is actually the expert, who value accrues to expertise and curation and taste. And who has that taste? It's experts, these university partners, and people still will flock to high quality brands, and there's also the credentialing element. So I think in many ways it's really more, to your point, a top of funnel mechanism to get more distribution to high quality learning, as opposed to a full, AI is doing the teaching for you. Maybe, I guess, flipping back to the OpenAI front, Leah, just given that you all have opened up this apps SDK, and Coursera, obviously, major name in the learning space, but there's a lot of other people in the ecosystem who also, whether that's MOOCs, universities, other learning providers. How do you think about how this plays out when there's multiple providers in the space and a lot of different education providers?
So we're very much at the beginning of this journey. If you look at the tech ecosystem, and you and I spoke about it before, about the way sort of major tech companies historically built ecosystem, and including Alexa, which Greg built. There's always decisions that are made about what role do your first party apps that you build play in the ecosystem? What role does study mode, play relative to Coursera? Can you actually put those experiences together? To what extent is the third-party app ecosystem going to be highly curated versus open? We're still at the very, very beginning of this journey. So a lot of those decisions haven't yet been made. But I would say from an education perspective, there's a couple sort of key demos and personas that I hope that we can double down on and engage with external partners. One, I think, is a whole world of applications built for our teachers to help them do their job better. And I think in very specific niches that we're unlikely to go in the short term. So I'm hopeful to partner with some of those companies. I think there's a whole world of learning experiences for younger students that are built with very different UIs, very different safety protections, very different experiences. And we see some of these companies building off of OpenAI's APIs already. And I think it'll be interesting to be able to serve younger learners in a very safe, protected, separate way. And then if you look internationally, there's a lot of, you can look at the UIs of the big edtechs in India versus those in the US. There's also a lot of sort of culturally different ways that people approach learning. So I think those are the sort of three different lenses that I'm looking at as we think about growing the ecosystem. But first and foremost is making these early apps successful, as Greg was saying, right now it's like you need to know the secret word. You need to say Coursera, I want to learn this. Most people don't know the secret word, and much of ChatGPT is still like that today. So I think the first phase is to take this app experience from one where you need to know the secret word to invoke the app to one where the user can easily discover what it is that they want to do in chat. Ideally, the app is automatically surfaced based on a lot of the memory and things we've discussed. And more learners are hitting the Coursera content.
Yeah.
So that's
I think we wouldn't be investors in the entire ed tech field if there was only room for one player. I think there's so many applications and ways to bring OpenAI as a front door to funnel people into different experiences, whether that's Coursera as your go-to high quality expert credentialed content, or to your point, educator tooling, or there's even stuff for parents, early childhood. There's just so much out there, and I'm excited to see what you all do as kind of that front door to all of those different experiences. I think we are unfortunately coming up on time, and I have so many questions for you all. I'm excited, to think about what even credentialing might look like in the future. I guess actually maybe I'll squeeze in that question, because I think that's Coursera is one of the preeminent players in credentialing, and OpenAI having that opportunity to do that. I'm curious, do you think there's a world where there's much more of the enrollment and credentialing function that lives inside ChatGPT? How do you think about bringing some of those elements beyond just the preview of content into the ChatGPT experience?
I think we engage in all of those conversations with Leah and the team at OpenAI to understand, how they're thinking about it, because they're going to bring, from their perspective, a whole set of knowledge about what people are doing on ChatGPT, how people are engaging, where they're seeing, more stickiness, if you will, more success for that use case, and then how that might apply to Coursera. And then on our side, we're continuing obviously to develop our platform. We have, a host of different AI-driven features to improve that learning experience. Credentials is one outcome of the learning experience that obviously is a really important one, to have, a verified skill that you can demonstrate to the job market for, whatever the given course is, whatever the given area is. And so we'd be open to conversations about that. I would say we don't have a preconceived notion of how the future should unfold, other than we know we want to keep evolving our learning experience to make it more personalized, more effective for learners, and more aligned to the outcomes that they want to accomplish. And I think a lot of those goals are very aligned with the high-level goals that OpenAI has as well. And so I think that opens the door to a lot of rich conversations.
Totally. And I would say on our end, what keeps me up at night is I'm constantly engaged with students who are power users on ChatGPT. And you talk to them and you hear about some of the things they're doing, you hear the type of work they're doing and like the AI skills and prowess that they have. And I think, wow, these students would be incredible employees. And right now, they don't have a way to easily showcase so much of either their like AI competencies or the competencies that they're clearly demonstrating with other types of work. They might not know about Coursera. Even if they did, they wouldn't necessarily know what credential to pursue. And so I think there's just a huge opportunity to allow more people in the world to showcase their skills, the right skills that they have, and make them visible in the job market. And I think both like Coursera and OpenAI could play a major role in unlocking that. So yeah. I'm hopeful to be on this journey. And Greg, I just want to thank you and the team for jumping. And Claire, like in the beginning, we didn't know what this was going to be. The whole chat kit was built, as the partners were integrating. And I just think it says so much about the team, the way they jumped on and went for it.
It was a lot of fun. We're incredibly excited to be and very proud, obviously, to be one of the launch partners. It was a ton of fun actually engaging them. It was a very rapid, Claire, time period between when OpenAI first reached out, when Leah first reached out, and when it launched. And when I first came to my attention, Tim told me, I was like, well, yeah, we should. That's super exciting. We should definitely lean into this. And the team did. And thank you for all of the partnership on your side, and really looking forward to seeing where we take it from here.
Yeah, I am so excited. I've already been playing around with it. I was telling Leah and Greg right before this, I was looking up conversation or courses on AI and education, and got one of Ethan Mollick's course from UPenn. And so I had already, which I didn't know existed. So, even just as a user, I am already excited about where this can go, excited to see what happens when you all unlock more of the career graph, unlock more of memory context, to see, how we can really flip traditional learning and meet learners where they are with this. So on that note, thank you so much, Leah and Greg, for unpacking what all of this looks like. I'm excited for this partnership, and hopefully maybe 1 year from now, excited to see what updates and launches you all put out there.
Awesome. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you so much.